Welcome into the roundtable. I'm Brad Wakai. That is Tyson Gentry. We are finishing up our divisional breakdowns today, Tyson. AFC West, not last but least, baby. This is the best division of football, and that's why we saved it for last.
Bro, we've been messing up sayings all day. Not least, but
I know it's been a tough one, but
something's going on here, man.
Regardless, the AFC West preview is what we're doing to finish this thing, and we're both jacked up for this. And I think pretty much everybody who's an NFL fan is jacked up for this. Best conference of football, maybe the best conference in the history of the NFL. What's your overview of this before we get started?
I think best conference of my lifetime. I don't know much about like the 1960s, whatever they had going on, but like quarterback wise, this thing is insane. Derek Carr is like comfortably the fourth best quarterback in this division, and Derek Carr is at worst probably the number 2 quarterback in every other division in football. It's insane, man. We were running through pre-show. It was like all 4 of these guys could win the Super Bowl. All 4 of these guys could win the division. There's just a lot of things in this division that are like different, man. Like the NFC West, we always talked about, how good that one was, or the NFCs back in the day. But this is a legitimate 4-horse race where all teams loaded up this offseason. Nobody backed down from somebody else. Crazy.
Yeah, it was amazing. And 4 legit quarterbacks, too, for each franchise. I mean, it's going to be a really fun divisional race in this one, especially with what feels like the Kansas City Chiefs are vulnerable and gettable this year, which we will get into. But let's start with the Denver Broncos here because they had to make a move. They haven't had a great quarterback play since Peyton Manning, so they decided to be aggressive and went out and traded for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson needed a new start. Oh, by the way, Vic Fangio got fired, and they decided to bring in Nathaniel Hackett to be their head coach, who brought over a bunch of people from Green Bay as well. Justin Newton, the offensive coordinator, who was with Hackett in Green Bay last year. I think sky's the limit for the Broncos in terms of offensively compared to what the quarterback play has been and the offensive philosophy under Pat Shurmur and Kubiak. So that's my first thing on the Broncos as an overview. We have no clue how good this offense really could be. And Teddy Bridgewater started off awesome last year, and then it trailed away as he got hurt. But Russell Wilson is so much better than Teddy Bridgewater. And with healthy weapons, I mean, this Broncos team could be legit.
Yeah, and we're not, touching on a defense that, by the way, was pretty good, has pretty good athletes, has, Patrick Surtain Jr. at corner, who showed a lot of promise. We got, the safeties are good. The line is good, right? There's blue chip guys all the way through this Denver Broncos roster. But before we get into best case, worst case, I just want to talk about somebody who was my guy a year ago, Javonte Williams. And I think the ceiling for this dude, if they uncap this thing, and I know Melvin Gordon's going to be a factor because it doesn't matter whether he's 22 or 29, Melvin Gordon can play. But Javonte Williams is going to be the guy, to me, that unlocks this next level of this offense. And it's next level, right, because we haven't seen it. So I don't know what that next level looks like. But with the weapons they have on the outside and the running game, this is going to be the best running back that Russell Wilson's played with since Marshawn Lynch. And he might be better.
Woo. You all have crowned these running backs. A.J. Dillon, Javonte Williams. Woo.
I'll be right.
All right, best case scenario for me, Denver Broncos legitimately can go to the AFC Championship game. And you may think that's crazy and a little in over your head for me to start. I mean, we've seen this, though. Nathaniel Hackett could follow in a Mike LaFleur type of, or a Matt LaFleur type of trajectory, stepping into a situation with an elite quarterback and taking them to the next level when they have a talented roster. That there's a precedent set for that. And I think that could happen here. They're the 5th most injured team in 2021. I expect that to change. 1-5 in one-score games. With Russell Wilson, you expect that to change as well. -4 sack margin, only 36 sacks for a defense that's supposedly good. They do add Randy Gregory, and Bradley Chubb needs to step up. That should change. And Russell Wilson's elusiveness should help with the 40 sacks that they gave up last year. All signs are pointing up for this team. If it all clicks, Russell Wilson can continue to play. Hackett can coach. This offense looks much better, and the defense stays very potent. this team could be in the AFC Championship game at the best case scenario.
Yeah, I'm struggling on best case because I think this team could win the AFC, but I think that's the case with everybody in this division almost. So you have to temper those things. So I'm going to stay with you. I'm playing in the AFC Championship game. Look, Cortland Sutton is coming off his second year off of an ACL injury. We know this about wide receivers. That's about how long it takes for him to get back to that production. I think everybody's casting him in a DK Metcalf role because that's what we have to do, right? We have to compare with what we've seen. But I think he'll be closer to the Tyler Lockett classic Russell Wilson. Fuck it, he's down there somewhere. I'm throwing this thing as far as I can. If Jerry Jeudy takes that step forward that people have been waiting for this will be year 3 now that we've been waiting to see it out of Jerry Jeudy. Flashes are there. Route running is great. Got to catch the ball. Got to catch the ball.
KJ Hamler, burner as well.
Your
he
boy.
Step into that role.
Where did he go to college?
He went to Penn State, small college, I think.
Never heard of it. But we have weapons everywhere, and the defense is good. Is Russell Wilson going to be the guy that puts him over the top? There's a lot of history that says he probably can.
Worst case scenario for me is they're just a year away. New quarterback, new head coach. It's the only team in the league who's getting a new head coach and a new quarterback at the same time. So different philosophies coming in to try to mesh together. That may be something that doesn't allow them to fully reach their potential early on or in their first year of this experiment. Also, if the defense doesn't quite step up, they've been injury prone. They haven't quite pieced everything together, even with Fangio there. That could limit them as well. So I think worst case scenario, they finish 3rd in this division.
Is Russell Wilson better than Matthew Stafford?
Oh man, I love both those guys. That's so hard for me.
I think it's pretty close. But are the Broncos a better roster than the Rams roster that Matt Stafford walked into a year ago? No. Exactly. And to me, that's where we're at with this team. We're looking at this like, well, Matt Stafford just did it. Tom Brady did it. The Broncos roster is really good, but it's a step below that LA roster or the Tampa Bay one that Tom Brady walked into. So I think worst case scenario, they're exactly where you projected them, somewhere around 3rd in the division. I don't feel comfortable saying any of these guys are going to be last place in the division, honestly, because I got to see them play. But worst case is, it doesn't quite work. And I think worst case, there's still a wild card football team. This team's pretty stacked, man.
Absolutely. And realistically, I expect to see this team in the playoffs some way or another, whether it's by winning the division or whether it's by winning enough games to be in the wild card race. I think Russell Wilson's too good to not be back in the playoffs. Remember, before last season, he had 0 losing records and he was in the playoffs every single year of his career. He's a really good guy. He elevates everything in that locker room or with the football team. I expect him to do the same thing for a Denver Broncos team who has been looking for a quarterback ever since Peyton Manning left his team. They'll be back in the playoffs by winning the division or by winning enough games to be in the wild card.
They're going to make the playoffs. Russell Wilson is going to frustrate Broncos fans the same way that he frustrated Seahawks fans. And I think the expectations that we have set for them are accurate. I think if you go through Vegas lines, it sure looks like the Broncos are supposed to lose in the second round of the playoffs. Kind of what it feels like. I mean, I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson fan in the world. I acknowledge the fact that he's a great quarterback. I just think that in Denver, it's going to take a minute because Russell Wilson wants to play the style of football Russell Wilson wants to play, and it's on a new regime to figure that out on the fly instead of having an established system or a 44-year-old legend walk into your building.
Are you telling me you don't like Mr. Unlimited?
I just like some of this. You said snake oil salesman forever. So I'm listening to Russell Wilson talk about concussion water, and I'm like, bro, what?
Oh, my God. Well, speaking of those Vegas lines we were talking about, we got to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders next. Very, very interesting offseason that they did. I mean, they were super aggressive in go getting guys for Derek Carr, namely his college teammate Devontae Adams at receiver.
Best receiver
Chandler Jones. Your best receiver in the league. Chandler Jones on the edge. That's going to replace the loss of Yannick Ngakoue. Didn't really mesh there for some weird reason, although he was productive. But I think Chandler Jones might be a better addition there. And they also got Rock Ya-Sin and Anthony Averett at cornerback. So trying to bolster that secondary that's been really bad for him, and then going to get another weapon for Derek Carr. Derek Carr's 9th season. I can't believe that. And obviously Josh McDaniels, the new head coach there, coming over, leaving the Patriots to take over the Vegas Raiders helm here. Interesting team heading in this season, Tyson.
And I think the Josh McDaniels thing is huge because this is completely different than pretty much any Patriots team he ever coached. And this is completely different than any Broncos team he ever coached for sure, or the 3-day period that he was head coach of the Colts. But this is going to be fun to watch, man. I think they drafted Zamir White out of Georgia in the 4th round, running back. Sounds like they like him a whole bunch. I figure to see him work in more than fantasy football players are comfortable with throughout this year. But when you watched the Raiders a year ago, it was like, we're really going to Bryan Edwards here on a, like, we have to have it, and it's Bryan Edwards. And then they go out and they get the number one. To me, I think Davante Adams said this too, actually, but like, if there's one play and one guy has to catch it, I'm picking Davante Adams to be my guy to go get that football. And Derek Carr just flat out hasn't had it. We love Darren Waller, but when it's a safety and then somebody else peeking and a linebacker on Darren Waller, is a lot harder. You can double Davante Adams. He's going to get open.
Yeah, and then you have Hunter Renfrow there to help as well, who's like the 3rd down machine. So it's a really good complement of receivers and weapons that Derek Carr is going to have to choose from here. Now, along those lines, best case scenario, I mean, I think truly the best case for the Raiders would be to win this division. I think that would be like their proverbial Super Bowl, is going from plus 700 odds, picked last in this division, to winning it just based on talent. I see that. I don't think this team is good enough to win the Super Bowl. I don't think this team is good enough to make a deep playoff run. But I think in a regular season environment, the best case, the absolute highest ceiling I see for the Raiders is they can do enough to win this division.
This is the team that made the playoffs a year ago and actually played Cincinnati closer than everybody else through the AFC playoffs. And they got a lot better. But I'm struggling to place the Raiders in that, if everything goes right, I could see them having the same season as whatever you think the Broncos can have. But I just think the top end of that is a little bit lower. And I think that's probably Derek Carr, who I'm a huge fan of. But also, like, there's a lot of names on defense. But if the cohesion's not there and they're still making Raiders plays where you look down the field and somebody 40 yards away is by himself for some reason, they're not going to win a lot of games in this division. Justin Herbert will find those. Pat Mahomes finds those spots. Russell Wilson finds those spots. And I guess we'll just get into worst case here, but worst case scenario is like they're the last place team in the division because they can't beat these other guys. Like, I expect all 4 of these teams to be really good out of division. But in division, it kind of feels like Patrick Mahomes and Derek Carr have had some epic battles. But Pat Mahomes comes out on top in a lot of those. I think Russell Wilson probably comes out on top in a lot of those, and Justin Herbert for damn sure with that roster, I think, comes out in all those.
Last year, 7-2 in one-score games, 5-1 in field goal games, had the most overtime victories since 2011. Man, oh man. I mean, worst case scenario is this. It was all fool's gold last year. This roster stinks. I don't care if they got better in certain positions. It feels like what they did potentially was put a Band-Aid over like a hole that's about to spew with water. Like they just put a little duct tape over it and like, all right, here we go. When meanwhile, there's tons of holes in this roster, namely the secondary and the linebacking core. We'll see if that's the case, obviously. Worst case scenario is that the thing was it's all fool's gold. And the flashy names coming in is, hey, man, the Raiders going to be good this year. I mean, look what they did last year, 10-7. And 7 of those wins were in one-score games. A lot of those were in overtime. So worst case scenario is this team could be bad and have a losing record, and they're easily the worst team in this division. I guess if we get into realistic, I don't expect that to happen. I mean, just realistically, I do believe Derek Carr is too good for that to happen where they're winning 6 games. I mean, I can definitely see them winning 8 games this year. I don't think that's too far-fetched. I think there's a potential, and realistically, I expect them to be last place in this division. I think probably 8 wins is right at the number I'm expecting for this team this year, and I don't think it meshes right away in Josh McDaniels' new system year 1.
Yeah, and realistically, I think they struggle in the AFC West. A lot of the spots that they're they built this thing. This roster's got a weird construction to it, Brad, because everybody else in the division has guys that can throw the ball. Everybody else in the AFC feels like they have guys that can throw the ball, and that's where the Raiders struggle the most on defense. And maybe they'll be able to get after the passer better than they did a year ago, but even then, man, we're talking about some killers in this division. I think 8 wins sounds really low when you say it out loud, but like
Right.
10 wins is not really a fourth place team, maybe with the 17 games. But realistically, I think the Raiders are fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the year.
Let's get into one of those killers, man. It's the killer of the AFC for the past 5 years, man, or 4 years for sure. The Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they just continue to dominate. Hasn't been as dominant as I think many people. We didn't say it would be. We were kind of contrarian on that aspect when everybody's saying they were going to win the next 17 Super Bowls. We said, let's maybe pump the brakes a bit. 12-5 last year, lost 24-27 in OT to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. Andy Reid back for his 10th season. Eric Bieniemy back for his 5th season at OC. Spagnuolo back his 4th season for DC. And Patrick Mahomes his 6th season here as a starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost Tyreek Hill, Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson as the receiving core. Charvarius Ward is gone. Tyrann Mathieu gone in the secondary. Anthony Hitchens gone at linebacker. And Melvin Ingram gone as their edge rusher. Justin Reed, safety, they added. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receivers to bolster that. And Jermaine Carter, a linebacker. New look Chiefs this year. They struggled with explosive plays last year, obviously with that too high shell. Losing Tyreek Hill shouldn't help that. Where are you at with the Chiefs?
I'm interested to see what Andy Reid has cooking. And, they draft Sky Moore, who a lot of people were super, super high on. Early reports out of camp, he was looking good, and then we didn't really hear much for the next couple of weeks. That's another guy to keep an eye on. But, they're probably still not going to be able to run the ball. Clyde Edwards-Helaire he's just not that guy. Andy Reid has a history of this where he gets a guy and he pigeonholes him into a role as a running back that maybe doesn't suit him the best. And we remember LaShawn McCoy and Brian Westbrook and these guys, but you forget about Correll Buckhalter and guys like that kind of get shoved to the side a lot. And I think that's happening in Kansas City's running back room. And to me, that's the biggest concern for the team behind the fact that they did lose Tyrann Mathieu. Because we'll see. But Tyrann Mathieu's number one move last year was looking back after the guy, he was covering somebody, looking back and throwing his hands up because somebody else was wide open 40 yards down the field. And now we're relying, are we going to watch Daniel Sorensen or somebody like Daniel Sorensen play 17 games for the Chiefs? It's going to be rough.
Well, Daniel Sorensen actually went with his buddy Tyrann Mathieu to New Orleans. I'm sure Tyrann Mathieu's like, God, man, I just got rid of this fucker, and he's following me here? Because that was who he was throwing his hands up at all the time, which is so funny. When I saw that, I was like, dude, Tyrann Mathieu's going to be like, I can't catch a break here. Best case scenario, obviously. No, he won't. Best case scenario, obviously, anytime you have Patrick Mahomes, you can win a Super Bowl. Best case scenario is they win the Super Bowl. Because when you have the best quarterback in the NFL or top 2-3 quarterback in the NFL, that's your expectations. That's what you expect to do, and that's what the fan base expects you to do. I think beyond that, I mean, is that really realistic? I think it's hard, man. They've made so many deep runs in the playoffs for so many years in a row. But, ultimately we are talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And so best case scenario, this team figures out a way to replace Tyreek Hill. They figure out a way to become more explosive, which they were very severely limited on last year regarding explosive plays. And they just get right back to it, and they go back to the Super Bowl and can potentially win it, best case.
Yeah, it's weird. When I look at this roster, I'm just like, I don't know. And then you get to the quarterback position, and it's like, oh, shit. He's just better than just about everybody else. I think, honestly, best case scenario for this team is they beat the Bills in the playoffs again. And that, to me, feels like it's just about as important. Kansas City being like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, does it, who's on our team? Still own you. I could see this team, absolute top end, winning the Super Bowl. But, Brad, one of the things last year is that they lost some close games against good teams. And we started to see a little bit of a chip, right? There was there's a crater on the Kansas City Chiefs armor, and it just started to split. Cincinnati found it twice. And I think if you go into worst case scenario with the Chiefs, it's that the roster's not as talented as it was a year ago. Travis Kelce, for as great as he is getting another year older. Apparently looks awesome, and I'm not going to project a Travis Kelce drop off, but Travis Kelce is by himself now. Him and Juju Smith-Schuster are going to operate in the same area a lot, and that might be easier to figure out. Maybe they don't face as much cover two, but safety's high and all that. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling already showed us who he is. It's not like he's going from Drew Lock to Patrick Mahomes. He's going from Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's just Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And maybe this offense can't get more explosive. And if they can't get more explosive, they can't win this division. And they could realistically be third place in this division.
Whoa. Wow.
Which is a playoff team. But they could be third place.
Worst case, I have them not winning this division. I think anything beyond that, predicting them to miss the playoffs, I think is a little short-sighted. I mean, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes missing the playoffs. I don't care what price it is. That's hard to do. But here's some things why potentially they could not win this division and hit this worst case. 5-3 in one-score games last year. Sure, Patrick Mahomes, you expect that, and he does magical things. They were horrible at turning the ball over last year, but they actually ended up +4 in turnover margin, which is crazy to think about. +3 in sack margin, only gave up 28 sacks last year. I think that may change a bit. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that may change a bit this year as that O-line continues to get a little older and they start doing some patchwork there. But here's what I'm looking at here. They faced the first toughest schedule in the NFL based on win total projections, and they were also the number one healthiest team last year. That is not a good recipe if you're projecting success. Going from the healthiest team to now facing the toughest schedule, there's going to be regression on the health side of things, as well as you expect the sacks and the turnovers to change a bit too. We'll see. But facing the toughest schedule, and a lot of that has to do with the division, but you expect that to start making things a little bit tougher on the Chiefs. So worst case, based on a lack of talent on this roster comparatively to what they've had, and a change in schedule and potentially some regression in turnovers and health, they could, I think, worst case, not win this division.
Feels weird.
What about realistically for you? I mean, we're given some, high variance, low variance in this team. I mean, realistically, where do you expect the Chiefs to be?
Realistically, I don't think they win the division.
Really?
I think they're gonna be the second best team in this division.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. I love Patrick Mahomes. I like a lot of the things the Chiefs have going on. Obviously, we're Andy Reid guys, both Eagles fans. So all that stuff didn't change from a year ago. But a lot of other things did. And Patrick Mahomes is awesome when he's improvising. But if he has to improvise too much, then we start to run into a little bit of trouble. And we've seen that in big games throughout his career. The Bengals game a year ago, the Bucs game was basically just him in the Super Bowl running around in circles and throwing it, parallel to the ground. Not a great look. And I just don't think that they're going to be as explosive as they were 2 years ago. I think they'll be closer to where they were a year ago, but they don't have somebody to break this thing wide open.
Man, it's tough for me to. I think they're very gettable this year, and we'll go over this in more detail in terms of our bets that we want to make it in divisions in our next show, our gambling show. I think realistically, this team's still going to be good. I don't think they're going to be great, and I don't think they're going to be one of those Chiefs teams that everybody fears. I think that's going to be a lot to their detriment, where nobody's going into the game expecting them to be like, oh shit, we're going to lose this one. I think I'll be like, damn, man, this is the time that we can pay this team back for what they did to us these past few years. So I think there's going to be higher level of confidence for their opponents. And I realistically, I think, man, I don't want, I think 11, 12 wins right at that number, like they were last year, just kind of staying the same. And I don't know if that's good enough to win this division this year. But realistically, I do think this team's going to be good because they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid calling the shots there. It's just they're not going to be a great team that everybody looks at as like this team, they're going to run through everything like they always do.
Name to keep an eye on with the Chiefs, though. Apparently, Isaiah Pacheco is murdering everybody at camp. Ronald Jones is apparently on the cut line. I don't know how that's going to play out here in the next couple of days. We still have a couple more till rosters are finalized here, but Andy Reid does seem to find those guys.
He does. He really does. All right, let's close this thing out with the LA Chargers. Now, talk about an overhaul of a roster, at least getting in some dudes here, man. I mean, Brandon Staley coming on his second season. This is Herbert's third season as the starter. They go and trade for Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson at corner, Sebastian Joseph Day, who was with Brandon Staley back when they're on the Rams to shore up the interior, along with Austin Johnson on the inside, Gerald Everett at tight end, and Kyle Van Noy as well. Drafted Zion Johnson, offensive guard in the first round. He should play a little bit. And then really the players they lost, Chris Harris Jr., corner, not a big loss there. He wasn't great for him. And you replace it with J.C. Jackson. That's an upgrade. Linval Joseph, Justin Jones, defensive tackles. I think the people they replace him with are going to be better for him. I think the biggest one is potentially Kaiser White at linebacker. I think that may be probably their biggest loss, but I mean, the people they've added are really good supplementations of that. I mean, the Chargers, Tyson, look awesome on paper. They always do. It's just a question of, can they actually put this thing together?
And I think that can be answered by what you feel about what they have at the head coach position. Because Staley's been a little bit of a lightning rod, right? I mean, he got crowned after year one. They didn't make the playoffs. And then everyone was like, well, we've seen all these other guys jump into this thing. And Matt LaFleur, right? We were just talking about him. We're like, some of these guys hit the ground running. They were worse than they should have been a year ago. And they had a lot of really stupid penalties that actually ended up costing them games. I don't think that they'll get the Austin Eckler that they got last season, because that just kind of felt like a career year for him. And maybe he improves, but like for him to play that many games and then play that many snaps in those games, I think that's why they go out and they draft Isaiah Spiller, right? There's somebody they're trying to spell him, especially in between the tackles. But, man, I can't lie to you. The Chargers are just juiced.
Dude, I think this team's going to be awesome. And I actually like Brandon Staley, but not for the reasons that these analytic nerds – because, this is the thing, because now that Brandon Staley's going for it on fourth down all the time, all these nerds who, love looking at their sheets and they're they feel vindicated. So they're like, oh, we have to hold on to Brandon Staley because he's been doing exactly what we've been preaching. Well, yeah, what happens that doesn't work? You lose games. And, that's what the football guys are like, yeah, but the way to win football games is by having points on the board. We don't care about the expected value of adding by going here. No, it works is when you kick a field goal
and you don't win by 0.3. I don't give a shit about your expected value. I don't care.
Right. So I like Brandon Staley for different reasons. I heard an interview with him and he was super impressive, super smart guy, but he's got to figure out how to get this defense going. I mean, the ground game or their rushing attack or stopping the run last year was awful. That's what cost him a lot of games. 32nd and stopping the run. Bring in some different guys there. That should help, but he's got to figure out a way to get this defense going. Forget about the offense. I mean, best case scenario, this team can win the Super Bowl. They're that talented. They're that juiced on as a roster. They have that good of a quarterback in Justin Herbert, taking a leap into his third season now. Best case scenario, Staley figures out the balance between when to be aggressive and when to be smart and not stupid in some of these decisions. Joe Lombardi actually opens up the playbook for Herbert, lets him eat, throw the ball deep down the field instead of these dink passes like he's fucking Drew Brees. None of that shit. And this team stays healthy because they have injury concerns all the time. And they just run through everybody because they're that good. That is the best case scenario.
And Storm Norton doesn't play another game for the Chargers. That dude stunk. He's just getting ran over on Monday Night Football 6 times in a row. No, best case scenario, this team wins the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert is – I'm not comfortable saying Justin Herbert is the second best quarterback in this division. I think Justin Herbert is every bit as good as the best quarterback in this division. And I'll put him on the same level as Patrick Mahomes. Maybe I'm a year early. But I think Justin Herbert is a freak. Everything that Patrick Mahomes can do, I think Justin Herbert can do. Now, I haven't seen him win the big one. I haven't even seen him play in the playoffs. And that's going to be interesting because Pat Mahomes was able to figure it out. But best case scenario, the Chargers win the Super Bowl, Justin Herbert breaks the passing record, and everybody that they brought in on defense clicks.
Okay, worst case scenario for me is that this team is just way too conservative on offense. The Brandon Staley can't figure it out on defense, and they still continue to make these bonehead mistakes. 5-5 in one-score games, 1-3 in field goal games. A lot of that has to do with the lack of points on the board because you're going for it in crazy situations. And that's what it comes down to. It as much as the analytic nerds don't want you to hear that. That's the fact of the matter. You have less points on the board, you're more likely to lose games. So I think Brandon Staley is going to be a good coach. I think he could potentially be a great coach. But what if he sucks? Because if he sucks, then this Chargers team is not going to reach their full potential. And we're going to be talking about another disappointing season for the Chargers. And that's just the facts. Now, how bad is worst case? I think even with all this talent, they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they can limp their way into the playoffs. But worst case scenario, they get into the playoffs and get destroyed in the wild card round by, one of the other teams in their division, maybe the Bills, if they don't have a great record, or, maybe like you said, maybe the Dolphins just run right through them. That's a potential there.
Worst case is Storm Norton has to play 17 games. No, just kidding. I don't know why it's just shit on Storm Norton right now, but
I think it's the name, dude. Storm Norton.
No, worst case scenario is like the defense doesn't gel, but I think the number one thing for the Chargers, I think they're going to be really frustrating. And I'm going to put that in some realistic terms too, where this team is going to make the playoffs, but we might not be allowed to see the offense unleashed. And that's going to be an issue. And you talk about being conservative or being aggressive. It cost them a game, which cost them making the playoffs. It cost them the playoffs a year ago. You have to look in the mirror if you're Staley and just say, like, I got to kick the field goal. Like, I got a kicker. He's one of the 53. We can trot him out right here. Because worst case scenario is Justin Herbert's still amazing. The offense still puts up a bunch of points. It's going to be on the defense.
Yeah, and realistically, I like Staley. I think he's going to learn from those mistakes. I don't expect Joe Lombardi to go all in on letting Justin Herbert throw the ball, which has me concerned. So I don't think we're going to be able to see their full potential. But realistically, I think the Chargers can win this division. I think they're definitely going to be competing with that spot. And I expect them to make a deep run in these playoffs. Now, what's deep? I mean, a wild card round to the divisional, sure. I mean, compared to what the Chargers have done for the past few years, that's absolutely a good season for them. We're talking about a loaded AFC. We really need to see how they look early on before we can truly know like what they're going to do. But realistically, they're going to be an awesome team. They're just too good not to be great.
Realistically, I think they're playing the Bills in the AFC title game.
Okay.
I love this Chargers roster. I think Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa getting after you as a quarterback. Look, well, we talked about with the Raiders and how they loaded up at a bunch of positions, and that's great, but they weren't exactly positions that are going to help them win the division in the long haul. The Chargers did the opposite. They went out and they got secondary help. They re-signed Derwin James as well, and they go out and they get Khalil Mack. They get interior guys to rush the passer from the inside, stop the run. It's going to be a fun season to be a Chargers fan because I think Justin Herbert is going to break the passing record, and we'll get into that on the betting show. But I think this offense is going to be really, really fun, and I think last year was just a taste of who Mike Williams is. I think Mike Williams is a stud. I know Keenan Allen's a stud, and I think Gerald Everett's the best tight end that Herbert will have played with. He's certainly better than 65-year-old Jared Cook. I know that. I think this team's going to be really fun, man. This is going to be – you're going to see a lot of the Chargers on red zone.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, that's a fact. All right, well, that's going to do it for our AFC West preview. We have completed all of our divisional breakdowns. So if this is the first one you're watching, go to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, all of those episodes are up as well. There's ton of stuff, man. I mean, finishing this, Tyson, we're like right around the corner from this game. We have one more like really pre-season type of show, and then we're just right into it. It feels good to be back.
It does, man. Shout out Storm Norton.
Storm, just best case scenario. You go right into Storm Norton doesn't play. Like that's the best case scenario.
This is the number one thing that could go right for the Chargers.
Oh God, that had me dying. That had me dying. All right, everybody. We appreciate you following us along on this divisional breakdown journey. It's been fun. We hope you guys enjoyed it as well. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. We really appreciate it if you subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify so you don't miss any of our new updates. And keep in touch with us on our social media pages. Instagram is @_the_roundtable_pod_. TikTok @_the_roundtable_pod_ as well. And our Twitter @TRT_pod. As Tyson alluded to, we have the betting show coming up next, so make sure to check that out. Tyson, anything else you want to say to the people before we're out of here?
Nah, man. I mean, just crushed 8 of those things. You've been changing shirts every episode. Brad and I did this back to back to back here. So don't want to fool you guys. It's the same guy. It's the same guy.
Well, we appreciate you guys all listening to us. Until next time, peace.